in the next 10 years, it's been estimated that about 90% of legal services are going to be delivered online. And we see as our North Star building the infrastructure on which legal services are built and delivered.
Today on LawNext, Dorna Moini is the CEO of Gavel. If you haven't heard of Gavel, well, that's because the name is a brand new rebranding of a company you probably have heard of, Documate, the no-code document automation platform that is widely used by lawyers and legal organizations. As you're going to hear today, Documate had recently been seeing more of its customers using the platform to build online legal products, and the company has been adding an increasing array of features to support those products. So Moini felt that a new name was in order, both to better reflect how customers are using the platform and to support what she sees as the direction of the company's future growth. She's my guest today to tell us all about the company, the rebranding, and her thoughts on productization in legal services. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to the conversation with Dorna, let me share a word about a product that can help you practice law more efficiently. Are you looking for a modern software to streamline your practice? Bill for Time has what you need. Bill for Time automates your time tracking with multiple timers, standardizes your invoicing with custom templates, and gets your firm paid up to 70% faster with built-in online payment processing. Focus on what you do best and not on your task list. Find out how Bill for Time can help you work more efficiently at billfortime.com. That's bill, the number 4, time.com. Now on to my conversation with Dorna Moini. Dorna, welcome to LawNext.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob. We go way back to the early days.
We do go way back, right? I mean, this is really your second rebranding, because we go back to the first iteration of Documate. And I actually thought that might be a good place for us to start today before we get to all the latest news and everything you're doing now and the change of the name and everything else. But I wondered if you could start there and talk about who you were, what you were doing, and why, how this company came about in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a lawyer, practiced for almost 7 years. I worked at a big firm, but I also did a lot of pro bono work on the side. And one of the areas of law that I did pro bono work in was domestic violence. I never thought that I was going to be in the legal tech world. I always thought that I would just stay at the firm and, try to make partner and go that route. But I wanted to build a very specific tool to address some of the needs of my domestic violence law pro bono clients. And what I really wanted to do was I was realizing that I was spending so much of my time on the early stages of the rules-based and process-oriented stages of these domestic violence cases. And I didn't have as much time once more critical pieces of the case came up, like person needed you to help them at a hearing, or there was an appeal on their case. And so what I thought would be really awesome if it existed was something like TurboTax, but for domestic violence survivors. And so at the time I lived in San Francisco. Now this is true about every city, but in San Francisco at the time, like you look left, you look right, everyone is an engineer. And so I had a friend of mine help me build out a tool that was exactly that. It was a TurboTax-like product, but not for tax, for domestic violence survivors. So we built that, we launched it, we were using it within our firm for pro bono attorneys, we were using it with legal aid organizations we were working with. And then we also launched a consumer-facing product, which consumers started to use and which you were the first to cover, Bob. And that actually, honestly, that was one of the reasons that led us into what is now Gavel, is when that article that you wrote launched about the domestic violence platform, we got all this inbound interest from other attorneys in other areas of law. And they were saying, okay, it's cool. They loved what we built for domestic violence, but they didn't need it for domestic violence. They were saying, we want to build something just like that, but for a totally different area of law and a completely different jurisdiction. Actually, in the first day that your article had launched, there was someone in Malaysia who wanted to build a child support tool. Someone in Canada wanted to build a divorce tool. Someone in Arkansas wanted to build an eviction defense tool. So that
I feel like you're trying to blame me for all this.
Yeah, exactly. It's all your fault that I'm sitting here today. And that's why we built what we then called Documate and what we now have rebranded to Gavel. So that's sort of been our journey.
Yeah. And whatever happened to that domestic violence tool?
So it actually is still up and running. We don't make it public to anyone to sign up because we haven't actually kept it updated. So the organizations, there's mostly legal aid organizations who are now using it. It's not a consumer facing tool anymore because we haven't been maintaining it. But there are some legal aid organizations who are using it and they sort of know that there are things they need to update. But interestingly, there have been new domestic violence restraining order tools that have been created on Gavel. And so we do sort of feel like we've come full circle where we built a very specific use case, then we built a platform. And on this platform, our very goal is that people will build for all areas of law. It helps expand all the tools that can be built by legal aid, by law firms, and beyond.
Yeah. So when you first transitioned into Documate from the prior company, and you started getting calls from attorneys all over saying, "How can we do something like that?" There were other document automation products on the market at that point. Probably most famously Hot Docs, which had been around for 400 years or something at that point. It's been around for a long time. I think almost 30 years at that point. So what was it that was lacking in other products that had people knocking on your door and wanting something different?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the products that existed and exist even now on the market, they typically fall into one of two buckets. Either they are very robust, Hot Docs has a lot of robust functionality, but it's very hard to use. Most firms who are using Hot Docs, they have someone who's developing it for them. They can't even make small tweaks or updates to it without having their Hot Docs developer actually help them build that out. The interface is also a little bit different, but it is robust, but hard to use. And the second bucket, I would say, is there are some tools out there that are kind of, you can fill in the blank, do some basic document automation that are really easy to use, but then what they lack is the robustness, the ability to have all these different types of data structures that they're holding and populating into different documents in all sorts of formatting methodologies.
Yeah. And do I understand, is Documate built on using DocAssemble?
We were originally built on DocAssemble. That's what we used. It was actually a really great tool for us to bootstrap and get our first product up and running. We have moved away from that. We still have a small piece of our platform that is on DocAssemble, but we have a lot of features that have gone, as you know, beyond document automation. And so as a result, we're planning to be probably fully off of DocAssemble in the next few months.
Yeah. And I asked because DocAssemble's creator, Jonathan Pyle, has been on this podcast also.
It's a fabulous product and really, really great and lots of legal aid organizations have built amazing tools on DocAssemble as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would be the difference between Documate and DocAssemble?
Yeah. So I guess Gavel now, the difference between Gavel and DocAssemble. DocAssemble is a developer tool and it allows you to do document automation specifically. So if you know how to code, Python, you can spin up and you know how to spin up a server, you can spin up a DocAssemble server and you can write Python code to build out document automation, what they call interviews. Gavel is a platform for end-to-end automation. So we do have the document automation piece, which is a big core of what we do. And we've built a lot of features around that. And it's going to continue to be something that we're continuing to build robust features around. But we also have a portal where your users can log in. We have a feature called Data Manager where you can do data management. We have client intake and customizability. We have some billing features. So if you want to bill your clients through our platform, you can do that as well. And we're building that out a lot more as well. We have a variety of different types of user management, depending on what kinds of permissions you want people to have. And it's a completely no-code tool. So You don't need to know any kind of code. We've had so many people who say, if I can do it, anyone can, usually the people who label themselves as less tech savvy. So it's really, really easy to click online and drag and drop and build applications for that really automate the expertise that you have in your brain.
So earlier this week, as we're speaking, you announced that you were rebranding, as we've said several times now, from Documate to Gavel. Why the rebrand? Why did you want to do that?
Yeah. So document automation, as you know, Documate insinuates document automation. And that is still, as I mentioned, a very core piece of our functionality. It's something that we will continue to build on and build out. However, what we have seen is that a lot of our customers are building much more than just document automation on our platform. They're building full-fledged legal technology companies that include all of the features that we've sort of been talking about, include portals. They communicate with their clients through our platform. They collect data and analyze that data. They do billing through our platform. We were starting to feel like the name Documate was becoming very limiting because it's limited to one of the features that we have. And what we see as the future of legal and the future of Gavel is we want to be the infrastructure on which legal services are built and delivered. So that's why we wanted to come up with, we did a lot of thinking about our name, and we went through a whole kind of rebranding, renaming session, but we decided to rebrand to Gavel. And the symbolism of that is that for centuries, the gavel has been used to express finality in decision making. So you have final decisions that are generated through a very trusted process. And so Gavel as a company, we are helping our customers take process, law, and services and turn them into customizable legal products that they can either use internally at their firm or what we see as the future of legal, which is really pricing them externally at scale in multiple different pricing and fee models.
It's a good name. I was surprised it hadn't been taken yet.
Same here, actually.
It's hard to find good legal tech names.
Yeah, the USPTO has a lot of. We were good on the trademark side too. So
good. And I mean, as you said, a number of your customers have already built products on your platform. Probably one of the best known, and also somebody who's been on this podcast is Hello Divorce, started by Erin Levine, right? So she's using, at least part of what she's offering is built on your platform, if not all of it. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, there are several legal tech platforms, including Hello Divorce, who are built on Documate. And what's really awesome about it is that we are sort of democratizing that development, the development process, the software development process. And so because they've built that on Gavel, they can spend their resources on hiring paralegals and attorneys and staff to help on gaining get expertise to expand into more states or to help with hybrid models of their process. And Gavel takes care of all of the technical aspects on the back end and really helps them scale and launch tools much more quickly.
And I mean, that's an example of, I mean, she started as a law practice and then started building out Hello Divorce as sort of an ancillary or an adjunct to her law practice. I know we talked earlier this week about what you've launched and in other aspects of what I've read about what you're doing now. A lot of your focus is not on companies per se, but actually on law firms that want to, quote unquote, productize their services in some way. So what does that mean? Explain that. What does it mean for a law firm to productize its services? Yeah.
So we see productization as turning legal services into something that is technology enabled and can be delivered at scale. And so there are typically 3 different ways that people on the Gavel platform do that. One is doing that purely internally. So that means that may be where they're using mostly the document automation and the data management features, but they are taking an area of law, looking at where there is rule and process in it, and then automating documents that they can then deliver at either lower costs or they have better cost structures internally. so that they can either pass that on to their customers or just make higher margins depending on how they're charging. We see this a lot, for example, in the estate planning arena. There may be some automation that they're doing internally. They're already potentially charging on flat fees. The pricing models are shifting so much in the legal industry, and there is so much price competition that it allows them to be more competitive. So that's more of an internal legal product. They can also use the Gavel platform as a training tool internally. So if they want to have a new associate or a new paralegal go through these flows, they can do that and make sure that there's everything is kind of being generated perfectly before that final review. So that's method number one. Method number two, which we see sort of as a stepping stone to full productization, is some form of attorney-client communication through either intake or through the client portal. So this is where the law firm may be creating a tool that they allow the client to interface with, to enter data into, upload documents on, maybe generate a few documents from, but mostly it's for viewing and entering data. But in those cases,
but beyond just client intake, though.
Exactly. Yeah. They may be viewing, what the status of their case is. They may be visualizing what data they've entered before, editing that data, uploading documents, potentially doing billing through that platform. But the law firm is still taking over the actual work product and providing it to the client at the end of that process. And then the third method is full-fledged, legal tech product like the likes of Hello Divorce, Just Tech, Landlord Legal, where they are putting the product in front of the client, and it may not actually be a client. It might not be creating an attorney-client relationship. It may just be a platform that they're providing for the end user to come on, enter data, generate documents, understand where they are in their case, access that client portal for continued guidance. And in that third bucket, we see both DIY methods where the end user is doing it all on their own. They can have no interaction with the company. And we see the hybrid model where maybe the law firm is also providing some advice and counsel, maybe a few hours of advice and counsel, or they're providing a few hours of document review at the end of the process. So I think a lot of times people think of this as black and white, like you're putting legal documents in front of a client with no assistance, or you're doing full-fledged legal representation. But there's a lot of middle ground here that allows innovation in how attorneys are pricing and packaging their services.
What's the argument for why a law firm even wants to do this in the first place? And how do they know which of those approaches they should take if they do want to start down this road?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of why law firms are doing this, I think both something that's been spurred from the law firm side and also from the consumer demand side. So we're seeing a lot more cost pressure on law firms, a lot more pressure to use technology. And so when the cost pressure is in and law firms are having to price in different models and different methods, they're looking for ways to do that in an efficient way that make their customers happy. So, for example, we've been talking a little bit about estate planning and family law and those areas. We've seen a lot of firms turning to flat fee or alternative fees. And so if you can introduce technology in that process, you can provide that service at scale. So I think a lot of times people think like billable hour is amazing. And the billable hour, when I first started, I was like, wow, I can't believe people are spending this much per hour on this service. But the billable hour has a cap. There are only a certain number of hours you can work per week. It's only a certain amount you can raise your rates. Building technology tools that allow you to scale on flat fees are really what allow you to build your practice and increase revenue for your law firm. And then I guess on the demand side, there's also the fact that consumers are asking for this. Consumers don't want to be coming into your office or getting on the phone with you as much. They want to be able to have a really easy to use platform. Like our Gavel is completely mobile friendly. You can have someone you can have your customer or your client sitting on their couch and watching Netflix while they're filling out different information you need from them or reviewing their documents. So it's convenient as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you quoted in announcing this your statistic that in 10 years, 90% of legal services will be delivered online or something like that. I'm not sure where that statistic came from, but Clearly, this is where we're heading, and it's probably only been spurred by the events of the past few years, but just the trend in general. I mean, it's sort of like, it reminds me a little bit of also like payments in legal, where, just a few years ago, lawyers were still primarily doing it all by paper and sending out invoices and getting checks in. And, I think it was probably clients that drove that transition more than anything. And I can see, in the area of productization and automation, that it's going to be the clients who are going to be driving that more than the lawyers themselves.
Definitely. Yeah. It's also a huge differentiator for firms to be the first few who are building these tools, and you get a lot of attention for it.
My guest, Dorna Moini, is the founder and CEO of Documate, which last week rebranded as Gavel, a name designed to better reflect the company's greater focus on helping legal professionals productize their legal knowledge. But what does it actually mean for a lawyer or a law firm to productize their services? How do you get started down that path, and what sorts of practices and services are best suited to productization? In a moment, I'll ask Dorna about all of that, but first, let's take a moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support LawNext. If you are dealing with mountains of paperwork and struggling to manage your firm's day-to-day operations, then Bill for Time is for you. The customizable legal practice management solution helps you easily track time, automate billing, share documents, and so much more, all within one platform. Let Bill for Time handle administrative tasks for you so you can focus on what matters the most. Visit them today to learn more at billfortime.com. That's Bill, 4, time.com. Welcome back to LawNext. Gavel is a no-code platform that legal professionals can use to automate the delivery of legal services and turn their legal knowledge into legal products. That sounds great, but what does it actually mean? How does a lawyer get started toward productization? And how does Gavel's platform support that? As we return to my conversation with Gavel's founder and CEO, Dorna Moini, that is where we pick up. So can you walk me through what your platform, say I'm a lawyer, say I'm that estate planning lawyer or a family lawyer, and I'm thinking, boy, this makes a lot of sense. I really want to do this. What does your platform do for me? What does it let me do that I can't do otherwise?
Yeah. So the core component of our platform is called a workflow. And so when you log into, as a builder on our platform, when you log into Gavel, you can create a workflow. And a workflow is basically one module of a particular case. So a workflow is comprised of data collection and typically documents, although we also allow you to automate decisions, but that's most people are automating documents. And then what you do inside of this workflow is you create all of the pieces of data that you want to gather or display. So for example, let's just go back to maybe the family law context. You may be creating a ton of questions on how many kids the person, whether they have kids, how many kids they have, are they married already, what states are they in, how many kids do those kids have if they have kids. So there's all this data that you're gathering, and based on that data, you're routing the user down different paths. So within our system, you can add logic. Logic can be applied to the questions that you ask, to the pages that are displayed, to even videos that you show the end user to guide them through the process. So really, this goes back again to that analogy of the TurboTax analogy. TurboTax guides you through the tax process. We want to allow you to build the components to guide people through any kind of legal process. So you can put questions up, you can put instructions up, you can put videos and images up for them. You can add logic really easily by clicking a little logic tab. It's very, very simple, doesn't require any kind of coding to determine the rules based on which people are taken down different decision trees. And then at the end of that process, you can either give them decisions or documents. And if they are documents, those may be a large set of documents that you're generating for them. Or it could be a large set of documents that you want to be sent back to you as the lawyer, instead of putting it in front of the client because you want to review those. So that's like the central module inside of the platform is the workflow. And then outside of that workflow, you can string those workflows together. You can allow people to view their data in a certain way. You can create a client portal where they can, load documents and see the sequence of steps they need to take in a particular case. And probably later this year, we'll be adding more communication functionality as well for attorney-client communication for those who want to do that in the platform as well.
So more of a client portal kind of a feel to it in that sense.
Exactly.
In terms of the communication and if my goal is to generate documents and make a TurboTax of whatever it is I do, am I starting with my documents or am I starting with your documents?
Typically, you will start with your documents. So we are a platform. We don't typically create any content. However, we do have a handful of templates that we've created. And then we also have an amazing community of builders who have built tools that they're making public, which is actually really, really awesome. So you can also see if other folks on our platform have built something that you can adapt or modify for your own use case. And then if you decide that you don't want to build out your own templates yourself, you can hire a Gavel expert to do that for you. And that typically happens. The platform is really easy to use. So people don't usually do that because they can't use the system. They use it because they have too many things to automate at once. So usually happens with firms where they're like, I have 200 forms and I want to automate these in the next month. Can someone help me do that? Because I don't have time and I'm working, 100 hours a week. So that's also another way to get up and running.
And then what about the e-commerce part of it all? I mean, how do I get paid for all this stuff I'm doing?
Yeah, so you can integrate with our payment provider. We use Stripe, and we're introducing some more payment providers this year as well. And that just allows you to connect payment, collect payment, and collect that on your end.
And if I'm using the Gavel platform, is it transparent that I'm using the Gavel platform, or do I have options for white labeling it to my own branding or however I want to do that?
Yeah, it's completely up to you. Some people use our branding and some people want to white label completely. So we have a lot of folks, especially those who are creating these full-fledged legal tech companies. It's funny because they sort of see using Gavel as a competitive advantage for them. And they've told us explicitly, many of them, they don't want people to know they're using Gavel because they're afraid others will copy them. So a lot of people white label completely, and they don't want anyone to know that it's not a developer who's building it out for them. But it's completely up to you. Yeah, you can put your own logo. You can completely customize all of the styling of the buttons and colors and fonts. All the emails can come from you. The domain can be completely yours as well.
When we spoke earlier this week about the rebranding, you said something interesting about that. I think I asked more or less the same question, and you said something interesting about that, which is that you like to think that using the Gavel platform will become almost a badge of honor for certain companies and for potential clients as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we see Gavel as being the infrastructure on which these legal products will be built. And so we hope that right now there are many people who maybe want to white label, but as we continue to grow, we hope that people will love the fact that they're built on Gavel, because we do assure you of all of the security features that we have built into our platform. We set up all of our clients on separate AWS instances. We, have really secure data collection and data management. We are constantly going through third-party pen tests to ensure that all of our data is secure. Our payment providers are PCI compliant. So I think all of that, hopefully at some point, will be a reason why people don't even want to white label, because they'll be proud to just display Gavel at the top because of what it means to the end user.
And so what is the potential of that for clients? Once a client has their data in your platform because their lawyer is using it, is there potential there to extend that into other use cases?
Do you mean, are we using that data in any way, or We're not
Is there
using the data.
potential, I guess, for the client to, well, I can be more direct because we talked about this the other day, but one of the things you were talking about is that potentially there would be opportunities for storing a client profile, client data that could then be basically transferred to another attorney who's doing a different kind of legal services, but on the same platform.
Yes. So assuming there is authorization on all ends, that's the ultimate goal is you're on the Gavel platform as an end user, and maybe you're accessing someone for family law. And next year you need an estate plan, or you're doing some sort of M&A transaction. But you have that same data that you need to be transferred into a totally different area of law. Because of the wealth of data that is being collected on the platform, I mean, it's not even just basic information about your general profile. People are literally, especially in the estate planning context, you have every single asset and every single child and all their dates of birth, and really every piece of information that you could potentially have about a person is gathered inside of the system. And so to be able to transfer that seamlessly as you go from attorney to attorney in different practice areas is really useful to that end user, and encourages other attorneys to want to be on the platform, because it means that it'll be a lot easier of an end user experience for their customer to come on board.
We've been talking a lot about law firms lawyers, law firms using the platform. We were talking about tech startups actually using the platform. Are there other types of organizations in the legal world for whom this platform makes sense?
Yeah, so our core market is law firms and legal aid organizations. We do have like corporate counsel, in-house counsel on the platform as well. And then we have a handful, we have really a lot of actually like legal adjacent use cases, which we're not really marketing directly towards, but they sort of find us on their own. Because if you think about it, there are so many areas, so many industries that are legal adjacent. So if you think about sales or HR or recruiting, those are areas where we see customers coming on board as well, just because the documents that they have are technically legal documents. They just don't think of themselves as being a legal department. But primarily, we definitely market towards law firms, and we've built out a use case that we think really meets 100% of their needs. And if there's a need if there's a need that a customer has that we don't have yet, it's on our roadmap. So it really helps us as a company to be laser focused on the future and our specific ideal customer profile.
Are you purely a tech platform, or do you also help customers plan around this? I mean, if somebody comes to you and says, really interested in your platform, but I'm really not quite sure it's right for my practice or right for me, do you help them think that through?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do that, but not for money, actually, just for free.
Charge for it.
Yeah, exactly. We're purely a tech platform, but we do get those types of questions all the time. We have unlimited. Our customer team is amazing, and it's all our whole team is pretty experienced with building legal products. And so we get people all the time who are like, "Hey, I want to use this. Can you help me think through the process and what I should tackle first?" Or maybe they have a really big idea for what they want to build, but they need help sort of narrowing down where to start, because that's oftentimes the hardest step. So we do that actually all the time, but it's not part of our business model.
Yeah. Well, I think you just said you have kind of an ideal customer profile, if I heard you right. What is the right kind of firm, if you can define that, for productizing their services? Is there a right kind of firm?
Yeah. So any firm that is practicing in an area where there are rules-based or process-oriented work product that is coming out of it, that's a perfect use case for us. So there are a handful of areas of law that we see a lot. So, we've touched on estate planning, family law, anything corporate transactional, M&A, startup, real estate. We see a lot of employment on the transactional side. We see a lot of. We also see a lot of litigators actually automating the discovery or complaints that they put out. So for example, in the personal injury sphere, any of those areas that have rules-based work are perfect for the Documate, for the Gavel platform. And that's primarily who we're targeting.
And what about size of firm? Does it matter how small or how large of a firm you are?
Yeah. So in the earlier days, we're speaking to smaller firms and mid-sized firms. And that was mostly because we just had a tiny sales and marketing team, which we still have a pretty small sales and marketing team. So it's just easier to talk to people when you don't have to go through a 6 month or year-long procurement cycle. But we do have a ton of larger firms on our platform. We have Fortune 50 companies on our platform who are using it in their corporate legal department. So a lot of those larger firms and larger companies have found us on their own, and they haven't necessarily been ones that we've done outbound sales to, but really it works for any size of firm. And we are seeing that it feels like it's a trickle up effect of who wants to innovate and productize, because at first I feel like we were really only seeing it with the smaller firms who were almost doing it a little bit out of necessity, where they needed to build innovative products. But now we're seeing a lot more of the large firms having separate tech arms that have legal tech products, or spinning off different tech products out of their companies as well.
So now that you've rebranded and come up with this new brand to kind of set the stage for the future of the company, what does the future of the company look like? What are you seeing down the road for how this company evolves?
Yeah. So as you mentioned a little bit earlier, in the next 10 years, it's been estimated that about 90% of legal services are going to be delivered online. And we see as our North Star building the infrastructure on which legal services are built and delivered. And so right now that includes tons of features that make all the features that we've discussed, but making them more robust. So making client intake more robust, document automation, the client portal, adding more features in billing. So for example, right now we only allow you to bill in one way, but we're adding subscription model billing and per use pricing to meet some of the needs of our customers. Data management and analysis is really important to our customers as well. So we're building out a lot of those features. But in addition to that, we are helping build the framework through which our customers are marketing their tools as well. So this is something that we're still in the very, very early stages, but you touched on it on your article. So we have a marketplace that we have about just kind of spun up. It's not really even fully launched, but we have some of our customers who have put their legal products, their legal applications onto, and that's allowing more of an ecosystem where our customers are talking to other customers about what they can use from each other. They're able to sell to members of the public, and it really creates a centralized source of all of those legal products so that they're easily accessible by the public as well.
One other thing I want to ask about it, just we've talked so much about making services available online through the platform. We haven't sort of explicitly talked about the whole access to justice issue in this country, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on where what you're doing with Gavel fits into addressing the greater need for legal services in the country.
Yeah, definitely. So as you know, legal aid and access to justice is the core of our business. And that's where we started with the domestic violence platform. About 92% of low-income Americans don't have access to really critical legal needs that they have. And there are a lot of different ways we need to tackle that problem. But one of those ways is technology. And so we see a really big role in technology to provide that access to legal services, information, and work product through the Gavel platform. So we are very involved with the Legal Services Corporation. We have several technology and innovation TIG grants that are active right now with a few different legal aid organizations who are building tools in many different areas of law. One that I think is fun that we did a session on at the LSC conference like 2 weeks ago is SMERLS, Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services. They have built a bunch of tools in the disability arena and the social security arena. And this kind of goes back to where we see the future and this marketplace. They have made those public so that any other legal aid organization can take those tools, and they've almost open sourced it. So any other legal aid organization can take those tools and modify it for their jurisdiction, launch it in a different state, make any changes they want to it. So that collaboration is how we think that legal aid is going to be able to be spread more widely, and not even just to people who qualify for legal aid. You know, we talk a lot about the important issue of low-income Americans, but there's also there are so many middle-class Americans who can't even qualify for legal aid, but also absolutely can't afford an attorney.
Yeah. And the Sproul's documents you talked about are available through the marketplace.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Dorna, anything else that you'd like to say that we haven't touched on or haven't asked you about?
Well, I guess I would just say I think a lot of the people who are building on the Gavel platform are legal tech entrepreneurs. And so I think, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, of it's a lot of times it's hard to think about where to start. And I think that's okay. So I would tell everyone who's listening, who's thinking about building a legal product, that you should dream really big about what you're going to build. Start small with something that you can tackle, and the whole team at Gavel is here to help you with that. If you want to reach out to us and have us walk you through that process, and then iterate rapidly. As you noted, we've done that several times, iterating on our business model and making sure that it really fits the future that we see for the legal field. So I hope many others will create more legal tech products and that will benefit the consumer public as well.
Dream big, start small, iterate rapidly. I like that. That's good. Well, congratulations on everything you've built up over the years, and congratulations on this rebranding. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we are at gavel.io is our website for anyone who wants to check it out. Yeah,
and that'll all be in the show notes as well. So, links to everything.
Wonderful.
So, thanks a lot, Dorna. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks so much for having me.
My sincere thanks to Dorna Moini for taking the time to join me today and share her thoughts on document automation and productization, and congratulations on the rebrand. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments on today's show, you can always tweet at us at LawNext Podcast or email me directly, ambrogi@gmail.com. LawNext is produced, engineered, and edited by Populous Radio. I am your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.